Alright, so hopefully y'all can actually hear me. Today I'm going to be working through a couple of different methods to try and recycle the ethanol or alcohol from old tinctures. I had a little bit over 2.5 gallons worth of tinctures for my first year of study and practice. The quality on them is just absolute garbage because it was during the period of time which I was learning how to produce spirits, and that represents a lot of money that was invested into either purchasing commercial ethanol or into fermenting and then distilling ethanol from my own homemade wine. So what I've got, after running all of the old tinctures through a coarse distillation in order to separate out all the salts and the majority of the fixed sulfurs, is 2 bottles of about 170 proof. I've run both of these through 3 distillations. I did use potassium carbonate to draw off a bunch of the impurities and water at a couple of points. Here was after the 3rd wash. You can see that it got much cleaner as I got most of the coarse or gross material filtered out. But one of the things that has kind of acted as a stumbling block for me is that the volatile oils, or what is commonly known as the essential oils of a plant, cross during the distillation of the ethanol. They cannot be separated, the ethanol from the volatile oils, through the process of a distillation. No vacuum distillation, no fractional distillation, no types of columns, none of that has been able to separate the volatile oils from these. And if I'm going to use this ethanol in the future to make tinctures from different plants, I absolutely have to find a way to wash or separate out all of the volatile oils that remain in here. You can tell that there's still volatile oils present because there's still a very strong, lingering impression of the plant that they were used for. So I've got 2 different methods that I'm looking at trying. One of which is using an oil as a magnet to help draw the volatile oil out of the ethanol. This is a fixed oil, this is a cooking oil. And the other one is using a charcoal distillation. I went out yesterday to one of the wildfire areas near me, and I harvested a whole bunch of hardwood charcoal, which I have crushed and washed 3 times. I was looking into activating it, into making activated charcoal out of it, but the only process that is viable for making activated charcoal is using superheated steam, which isn't something that I have the hardware to do. So after looking at a couple of comparative analysis of using household chemicals, including things like lemon juice, to try and activate charcoal, the results were terrible. You cannot just take charcoal and activate it by soaking it in lemon juice and baking it. It actually significantly reduces the adsorptive properties of the charcoal. So my best shot here is going to be to just run it through a heavy charcoal filtration, not worrying about the activated part of activated charcoal. I hope you all can hear me. I'm using a headset today in hopes that the mic will be a little bit more consistent. So hopefully y'all are getting some sound from this. So I ran my first oil magnet separation last night using a separatory funnel here, where I used cooking oil. I poured my ethanol in through the top. You can see the separation has occurred here between the ethanol and the cooking oil. The batch I did last night did produce a cooking oil that has a ton of plant, just really nasty plant scent soaked into it, which tells me that it did pull at least some amount out. Nasty. So I know that this method of using oil as a magnet, of fixed oil as a magnet for the volatile oils that are present in the ethanol, I know that this works at least to some extent. Basic rudimentary testing tells me that there is definitely volatile oil now in this fixed oil. This is the ethanol portion that I poured off the top. I'm going to run that through distillation to make sure that there's no fixed oils left in there, and hopefully I will end up with a nice, pleasant, scent-free, more or less Everclear that I can use for future distillations. Oh, hey, I've actually got some people in here. What do we got? Someone violated community guidelines. Oh, hey, Sid. What's the T-Rex do? This T-Rex is my rubber ducky. I do come from a programming background, so if you're not familiar with what a rubber ducky is, it's a thing that you tell your problems or solutions to so that you have a chance to say it out loud, like a sounding board. It gives you an idea of whether you make sense or not. So he's my alchemy muse. I don't know why it's a T-Rex, that's just what I have. So he lives here. Sometimes I call him my lab assistant. Anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and pull this oil out of the bottom and separate this ethanol. Let's move in here so y'all can see this. This is a separatory funnel. Obviously, it is a funnel-shaped vessel used for separating. So if you're using a separatory funnel, you always want to unstopper the top first, because if you don't unstopper the top before opening the bottom, it generates a vacuum in here that not only prevents anything from exiting, but also makes it really hard to pull the stopper off of the top. So we're going to pull the stopper off the top, and then I've got the catch vessel way down here, which is not smart. You should definitely put these closer together, but I'm lazy, so I'm not going to. And we're going to open this up. Very slow. And you see we've got a little bit of a stream running out. Turn this up. And we're going to pull all of this oil out of the bottom. If this were an oil-water separation, you'd be pulling the water off of the bottom first, because the oil is lighter than water, but this is an oil-ethanol separation. The oil is heavier than ethanol, so it sits at the bottom. We really would rather not burn any excess cooking oil in the bottom of the distillation flask, so we're going to err on the side of ending up with just a little bit of ethanol in this oil to make sure that all of the oil is pulled out of the bottom. Let's slow it down as we get to the bottom here. And now we have ethanol running through. We're going to close this up. And y'all can see this is 2 batches of the oil. There's a few droplets on top, which is going to be the ethanol that came across with it. And yeah, this has a distinctively nasty, volatile plant smell to it. Let's go ahead and give us our wide-angle view again. And what I'm going to do, for the sake of trying to reuse this oil, put the oil over here, and I'll put the oil on incredibly gentle heat. The idea being that the volatile oils that it has pulled out of this ethanol solution will evaporate off. I'm sure it's going to smell absolutely fantastic. Not. But one of the things I love so much about alchemy is that in alchemy almost everything can be recycled or reused in some fashion. Almost everything has a purpose. And so if there's a way for me to just evaporate the volatile oils back out of this fixed oil so that I can use it as a magnet to pull more volatile oil out of the ethanol that I've recaptured, cool, that means that I'm not wasting a bunch of cooking oil. So now we have a bunch of ethanol in here that has already had at least some of the volatile oils separated. Don't forget the stopper. And we're going to let this all run into the distillation flask. I'll be distilling this off again later to make sure that any of the oil that has managed to get across in here properly separates off. I don't want oil in my ethanol. That's gross. So if we move in, I'm going to move in real close here for a minute. Y'all can actually see, hopefully you can see, these little drops sitting on the surface. Some of that's going to be the oil that managed to cross with the ethanol, and that's what the distillation is going to be removing from it. So yeah, this is entirely experimental. I ended up researching a bunch about vodka distillation methods in Russia in the 1900s to 1920s. As they use different types of filtration and other processes in order to separate out the nasty volatile oils to produce a clean and clear spirit. And that's actually the most comparable to what I'm trying to do here. So thank you, ancient Russian vodka distillers, for the information you have passed down to us. The second method, rather than using an oil as a magnet, is going to be a charcoal distillation. So for those of you who missed it earlier, yesterday, I actually have a video up from yesterday. I went out to one of the many recent wildfire sites in my region, and I collected a bunch of charcoal, and then spent a couple of hours going through and separating it out by hand from all of the unburnt wood material that was still embedded in it, and crushing it by hand, washing it several times to make sure that I had as much of the ash and plant tars and resins and stuff out of it as possible. I did look into making activated charcoal out of this, but the only valid method of making a functional activated charcoal today involves using superheated steam, which I don't really have the hardware or the locations to do. So we're just going to go with a regular charcoal filter. Looks like I've got a few comments. Let me see if I can catch up here. It's hard for me to monologue and read comments at the same time. I'm not used to getting a lot of comments. I need something like that, possibly a clam, like a Wilson volleyball. Yes, the T-Rex is definitely like a Wilson volleyball. It's what a rubber duck is. It's just something you can talk to. It is very fragrant. This oil is nasty as hell. It's a combination, a distilled combination of like 18 or 20 different plants worth of tinctures. It is all the volatile oils from all those different tinctures kind of compressed together. It is possibly the gnarliest thing I have concocted in my laboratory. Let's see, wizardry. Yes, very much wizardry. Cooking up wizardry. That's a potion. I mean, the potions are in the closet behind the camera, or up here. These are more like reagents. Is ISO able to be separated this way from water moisture? No. The easiest way to separate isopropyl alcohol from water is using molecular sieves. You can also use fractional distillation, but I don't work with isopropyl, so I'm not 100% on methods that would do so. QT makes a nice measurement tool. All right, now I've caught up on the comments. So the second method is using a charcoal filtration. This charcoal has been washed. It still has some water in it. I'm not worried about that. We're gonna need to dilute this ethanol down to about 40% anyway, in order to use a charcoal filtration. There are volatiles in charcoal that are more dissolvable in ethanol than in water. And so, following the advice of vodka distillers who use charcoal filtration to clean up their ethanol, this needs to be at 40% in order to not absorb crap out of the charcoal. The goal is that the charcoal has tiny little pores in it, pores that are much smaller than ethanol or water molecules, that will capture these really tiny volatiles that are in it that give it that nasty plant smell. And so we don't want this absorbing crud from this. We want this absorbing crud from this. So let's grab a hydrometer, wherever the hell I put it, and get this cut to about 40%. Where did I put my hydrometer? Oh, there we are. So, to start, we are at something over, what is that? That's TR. I can't fill this high enough to actually get a proof reading off of it, but we're at something well over 120 proof. The hydrometer is sitting on the bottom. Now we need distilled water, which of course I never store anywhere convenient. Where is it? Here we go. So that we can get this to about 80 proof. And then it will be ready to filter. Let's see, got some comments. Nope. All right. Da, 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 da. Now again, I'm not worried about this being watered down. I'm going to be redistilling it later, which will bring the proof back up. All right, let's see. We're at 140 proof, which is 70%. We want to get this down to like 80 proof. I may have to cut this in another container. Yeah, we're still at about 120 proof, so we're gonna have to use a bigger container, which is honestly fine. I just have to be able to get the hydrometer into it. We're still too high. Let's grab some more water. Thankfully, because I am distilling this, it's not going to kill me to use some tap water. Although, just to be 100, it is bad practice to use anything but distilled water for alchemical processes, not even for cleaning things. If I had thought I was actually going to be going live today, I probably would have looked up these ratios before just trying to eyeball it and failing spectacularly. So let's see, we're still at close to 90 proof. So let's see if we can get this down to 80 before we run out of space. Nope. All right. Let's go ahead and cut this with more water. Again, we don't want to be using anything much higher than 40% or 80 proof, because we do not want the alcohol pulling impurities out of the charcoal. We want the charcoal pulling the impurities out of the ethanol. Now we're at 90. There we go. Now we're at about 80. So let's just put this out of the way for now. So for a charcoal filtration, what I've got here is pre-wetted charcoal. It's been washed several times. It's been ground to a more or less fine consistency, not quite a powder. And then in the bottom of the funnel, I've wedged a cotton ball, and what this does is this will allow the liquid to pass through without the charcoal ending up in our little collection vessel down here. And we've got so much of this to filter. Let's go with a larger collection vessel, like this. All right, so now, this is going to take a little while to percolate because it has to entirely saturate the cotton ball before it's going to start dripping at all. And then after that point, we actually don't want it to be filtering too quickly. The longer it stays, the ethanol water mixture, the longer it stays in contact with the charcoal, the more the charcoal has the chance to absorb out of it. So I'm going to let this go for a while. I'm gonna try to filter at least half of this half-gallon container. Are we making tinctures? Actually, what I'm trying to do is recover the ethanol portion from tinctures that I made several years ago when I was still very much in a novice state. And so this is a comparison between two different methods that might be able to separate the volatile oils from the spirit or the mercury. So the goal here is the separation of the volatile sulfur from the mercury in order to recapture that spirit so that it can be used again. I'm a really big fan of finding a use for everything that I have to produce or refine in any way, so that I'm not wasting materials or time. And making my own ethanol is a huge input of labor, and buying my own ethanol is a lot of effort in things like sourcing and then just the raw cost. So if I can find a way to recycle what turned out to be, I don't know, what size are these? What turned out to be like 3.5 liters worth of 180 proof ethanol that I've recovered from my old tinctures. That saves me a ton of money, and it also gives me a way to kind of keep the circuit closed so that I'm not throwing things out or adding anything more into the process that is necessary. So back to the comparison. I'm gonna let this run. When it's done, I'm going to go ahead and give it the smell test like I did with the ethanol that has had the volatile separated using an oil magnet. And then later I'll do a TDS reading, a total dissolved solids reading, using a commercial Everclear as the control, and then using each of these two methods and see what we've got in terms of dissolved solids. A TDS reading isn't the perfect measurement for how much volatile oil may remain in here, but it's the only tool I have in my science kit that might give us an idea of if one method or the other is any more efficient. I have a feeling that I'm going to end up combining these two methods, that I'm going to end up doing a oil separation and then a carbon filtration, and that I may have to repeat one or both of those multiple times in order to get an ethanol that is entirely free, at least as can be detected by standard tools and observation. And then whatever I end up producing using this recovered ethanol is more likely than not going to be only for personal consumption until I find a way to test for sure that I have removed all of the volatiles that have been introduced during the original tincturing, because I don't want to be giving or selling a tincture to anyone that is not exactly what they're expecting it to be. Have you done this before, or is this an experiment? This is an experiment. I actually had to hit up a handful of people in a couple of different alchemy study groups that I'm a member of to ask for input on this, because in the way older texts are presented, as cryptic as they are, most of them say that once you have married the sulfur, the volatile sulfur, to the mercury, that they are inseparable. But we know that that's not true. In modern chemistry, literally everything can be separated through one method or another. So I'm trying a modern chemical separation method using a charcoal filter, and I'm using an alchemical separation method, which would be using a fixed oil as a magnet to collect the volatile oils. I'm really interesting. Do I think redistillation would be effective? Actually, I've already tried. Both of these bottles here, these two 1.75 liters, are the recapture after distillation of the tinctures. What I did was took all of the tinctures, literally just stirred them together in a massive bucket, and then ran them through a coarse distillation to separate all of the fixed sulfurs and salts out from the spirit. The stuff still absolutely reeked, so I knew there was tons of volatile oil still in it. And then I ran it through two more simple distillations followed by a fractional distillation, and it's still, like, I'm capturing a little bit of water and a little bit of cloudy gunk each time, but that smell is still just as pungent as it was after the first distillation. So this is the next step after simple distillation has failed to separate those two components. This is actually what I recovered from the initial distillation. This is all of the salts and fixed sulfurs from about a bit over 2.5 gallons worth of tinctures. After their initial calcination, my propane tank ran empty, so I haven't been able to go through and actually calcine this properly to the point of incineration. But when this is finished, I should have a bunch of salts to recover. They will look something like this. And then I use these to make oil of tartar perliquium for AB extractions, like making ends. That salt that I recovered is very white because it has been run through multiple purifications, so that I can produce an ends without having to worry of it carrying the signature of the plants the salt originally came from. Looks like we're starting to get a little dry, and add a little bit more to this. But yeah, this is going to take all day. So I'm going to go ahead and get off live. But y'all can expect a video at some point during this week when I will go ahead and go over the results of these two different methods of trying to separate the sulfur from the mercury, carbon filtration, and fixed oil magnets. Thank you everyone who joined me and decided to hang out. I'll see y'all next time.